Welcome to the Floored-U-Cation Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hadeen, owner of Illustrious Hardwoods in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. We're here to talk with contractors from all across the country about the issues that matter to you. This week's guest is Donald Perkins. Donald owns DFP Flooring in Torrington, Connecticut. We discuss having subcontractors versus employees, building partnerships, and getting involved in the industry to help raise the overall bar. Donald Perkins, are you on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Oh, welcome to Floored-U-Cation Pro. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, give us a little background, business name, where you're located, what you do, all that good info.
My name is Donald Perkins. I own DFP LLC, your dedicated flooring professionals in Torrington, Connecticut. We install everything except ceramic tile, epoxy, and do sand and refinish. And we don't do sand and refinish. We don't do a lot of sales, but we do offer that if requested.
Okay, and how long you been at it?
I started helping my dad when I was 6, and I've been installing full-time since January 2004. And owning a company in some form since January 2005, and I started DFP in October 2007.
Okay, and lastly, certifications.
I have my CFI R1 C1, and I'm certified by the NFIC for natural fiber installation.
Awesome. Okay. And so I got to ask, if you've had some form of company since 2004, and then you said DFP's been around since 2007?
Yep.
Why the change?
I actually, in 2004, I started working for my dad in 2004, full-time. In 2005, we partnered to alleviate some insurance issues. The state of Connecticut required all subcontractors to have workers' comp. And so instead of having two different policies, which before that I could just be paid $10.99, no problem, we partnered and created one company, Perkins Floor Covering Installation Services. And then in 2007, there were some complications due to the messiness of life before joining together, and so we ended up forming two different companies. Dad kept the Perkins Floor Covering, and I went off and I started DFP, but we still work together daily.
Okay.
And we just kind of broke up the jobs so that we both made a good living on it.
Okay. Right on. And let's see. You got a couple crews. So how do those work for you?
Right now, the company consists of myself, my dad, two other guys that are almost to full installers, and then a couple of helpers. In addition, we've got my mom who runs around and does a bunch of errands, picks up materials, make sure we don't have to leave the job site, so she'll make a Home Depot run, or she'll run to one of the supply shops to get stuff so that we're not losing a couple hours in the day. And then my wife works the office, excuse me, doing the books, estimates, paperwork stuff that I'm admittedly absolutely terrible at. Everybody is an employee for me. I don't have any subcontractors. If somebody requests a wood refinishing or a ceramic installation, I do have a couple of guys companies that I will recommend for them, but at that point I just kind of back off and I let them handle it directly. With the employees, with the crews, Dad runs the carpet side of it for the most part, unless there's no carpet scheduled for that week. And then the guys are broken up based on the needs for the installation and the jobs. So we can run anywhere from 2 jobs to 4, depending on the needs of the schedule.
Okay. And, you know, where I want to take this is, we've gotten a couple of requests in the Facebook group recently about talking about 1099 and employees. So you've elected to have employees instead of having subcontractors work for you. And as I grow my business, I'm looking to do the same thing. I'd love to know why you elected to have employees, though.
Excuse me. Initially, I took on the employees. So Dad could shut down his company because he was tired of running a company and didn't want to. He just wanted to install. He didn't want to be worried about the invoicing the customers and tracking the jobs and scheduling everything. And so I brought Dad and his helper on as employees so that they could just do the installs and, you know, whatever. And this was all happening during the recession when I was actually off doing a regular job because there just wasn't enough work for me to continue installing full time. So when he shut down, the work he was doing got brought into the my company, and it was able to support those two. And we always looked at it as if things got really bad, and we needed to lay them off, they would have the protection of the unemployment insurance.
Okay.
And then as the economy improved and got busier, I came back in full time and realized, hey, I'm a floor guy. This is not what I ever really imagined or expected. And then started learning and progressing and bringing in. And I looked around. I looked around at the people I could bring in as like subcontractors to help me grow. And once I started learning and going to seminars and educating myself, I was like, well, these guys are all doing it wrong, and I don't really feel like dealing with fixing their bad habits to do it the way it needs to be done, which led me to pretty much doing just employees. There have been a couple of subcontractors I've used along the way in the sanding and refinishing side of it, but ultimately I've just turned those over to them when they expressed more interest in being owners and contractors themselves than being an employee. And they do a good enough job. I trust that they're going to uphold my reputation because I recommended them for that project.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. I've got a couple companies that I, essentially sub work out to, but I just collect a check and pay them what they charge, and there's no 1099s or anything involved just because I know they do good work. And it's a little bit cleaner. I don't have to worry about any additional paperwork, things like that. I know that I elected to have my first employee because I wanted the control. I wanted to be able to say, you show up here, you show up when I tell you, you leave when I tell you, you'll get paid the overtime.
Yep.
I think you get to build the atmosphere that I'm after is right now. It's me. My wife helps me out. She's not officially a part of the business, but she definitely plays a big role in it. I'd love to see my kids get involved in some aspect as they get older. They're 8 and 10 and have no interest right now, but I want to build this family business. I want to have it feel like the employees are a family. When I can get a bigger house and things like that, I'd love to have everybody over for a dinner once a week, once a month, something like that. Do little parties and things like. I want to build this family atmosphere where everyone feels like they're actually a part of it. And I don't know that you can necessarily get that when you're subbing out the work and it's more of a, here's your job, go do it however you're going to do it. and then I'll just cut you the check at the end. I don't know if you can get that same feeling from that. And I'm really after that family feel. Like I want everybody to feel they're a part of the team and making something happen.
Yeah. Well, I know back in excuse me, back in the 80s, and even when I started helping my dad in college, the stores that we were working for, he's always been a sub for them, and you definitely got that feel of family. And there's a couple stores that I work with, I sub to now, that you get that feeling of family, but it's almost more of a distant relative sort of family.
Okay.
Whereas it used to be, you subbed for us, we're going to take care of you. You know, if you need something, let us know, you know, kind of type of family. And it's not really looked at as, you know, that big of a come and hang out with us, you know, spend time. We care about what's going on in your life. It's more, we're going to care about you and your life as long as you still produce for us. But the second you start, you know, faltering, we don't want to talk to you anymore. You know, you're going to go to the bottom of the pile, and we're going to deal with it later. So I think with the employees, you're able to build a structure of trust and a connection with them, which is a good thing. But at the same time, it can kind of hurt you. And also,
I agree. There's some people that can't ever fully understand the friendship / boss relationship. And, you know, look, I can get along with you just fine. And we can hang out, we can go grab a beer, we can have you over for dinner, we can do those things. But you can't get mad when we're at work and you're my employee and I've got to discipline you. You know, you've got to be able to draw that line and maintain it. And, you know, so you've got to be able to be friends, but you got to be able to maintain that there's there's a separation at some point too. And you've got to be able to differentiate.
There's got to be a disconnect. You have to be able to flip a switch on it. And then you have your moment between, you know, where you're being disciplined and you're being the boss. And then everybody goes back to work, and then you can flip the switch again and, hey, you know, you're friends. But I've actually seen a generational difference in that that sort of thing being able to happen. And people that are closer to my age, and in the millennial generation, again, I really don't like that, but in the millennial generation, where they don't have that ability to disconnect from it. And that's where most of my employees until the last couple of years were from, was the millennials. And they, once you started being their buddy, they always wanted you to be your buddy. Mm-hmm. Even though, you know, I'm cutting the check and I'm taking the responsibility for everything. Once I started showing a personal interest in their lives and making sure that they were, you know, getting into a good spot. And if they had a problem, I tried to help them with it. Then all of a sudden, I'm not the boss anymore. I'm not the person who is, you know, responsible for everything. I'm just another one of them, another guy.
Yeah.
And with the guys that I have now, all of those employees, other than Dad, my wife, and my mom, those are, I don't even know what they call them, Gen Zs, I think. And I've been very good about distancing that relationship. Like, I'm the boss. I don't get involved in their personal life and whatnot. And I've actually been able to turn that into more of a, I don't want to say mentor, but when they have a problem and I can step in and be like, hey, this is what we need to work on with it. This is the best route for it. They're much more understanding and much more appreciative of that. And then it's, once that whatever crisis or issue has been, you know, worked through, go back and we can flip that switch again. And now we're boss and employee.
Yeah.
And there's much more of a almost understanding and acceptance of everybody's, we'll call it, roles in the relationship.
Well, and so I think some of that's going to come down to age too. And so, I mean, one, dude, I am the definition of millennial because I was born in 82, so I turned 18 in 2000. Like that is the spitting image of millennial. And while I don't necessarily identify as well with them, I'm kind of on the cusp of the shift from Gen X to millennial. I just don't. There's an interesting thing there, but you're too close in age, I think, to where it's like you said, like now with the Gen Z kids, they look at you more like a mentor. Yeah. But you're also old enough to be their dad. So there's not much of an issue looking at you as a mentor. Whereas with the millennial generation, you're old enough to be like, pretty much you're just their older brother. And so I think it's a lot harder to sometimes command respect from people that you're a lot closer to in age. And some of that's a personal thing. Some of that's just comes down to, it's just personalities, and some people aren't going to get it, and they're not able to look at you as a leader when that's exactly what you are, because, you know, oh, well, you're only like 10 years older than me. Why should I respect you? You don't have that much more experience. Well, maybe you do. So there's a lot of things to work through. What are some things that like helped you work through that and be able to gain the respect from your team?
A lot of it has just been, I think, just being patient with them. After dealing with the guys that are closer to my age, and I was born in '81, so I'm really on the cusp of the millennial thing, and that's where it drives me bonkers because I associate more with the Gen Xers than I do the millennials. And even though I grew up with the technology, I don't understand it. Give me a pen and paper. But with dealing and being forced to step away from the installation and having to go get a regular job, I was working with a Taylor rental and working on the tent crew, and I actually approached them about and in my goal, or not goal, but my mission to get out of flooring, I approached them about coming on as a manager, and that's kind of the role I worked into. So I was working on the tent crew as a manager. I was working, delivering, working the front counter, writing contracts and all that. And a lot of the tent crew was interacting with brides, and we all know how much stress and pressure is put on these women coming up to their wedding day. Mm-hmm. And so they're going through these insane, like they're freaking out about, oh, this color ivory isn't the same as this ivory tablecloth, isn't the same as this ivory tablecloth. Oh, the dance floor got put in the wrong spot. We wanted, 11 tables and we got 10 tables. And it's like, okay, these are all changeable and fixable things. And so it became a lot of, I don't want to say hand-holding, but a lot of kind of very nicely and professionally putting it all in perspective for them. And it always drove the kid who grew up in the family business that owned this particular store. When I would go up to them and be like, and they're starting to go into meltdown mode, and I'm like, okay, I understand. Here's what you need to do. This is going to be one of the greatest days of your life. Just breathe. Step back and breathe. It's all going to be okay. We can fix these things. Not a problem. And by being able to empathize with them that they're freaking out and, just laying it into perspective that it's not that big of a deal, that your tablecloths are slightly different shades. It's not the end of the world. It helped me start learning how to talk to people and get them to calm down and understand what was actually important for them. And that's where I actually kind of grew a lot. So when I came back into flooring full time, that I was able to talk to guys, to employees, to clients, to get everybody to kind of be on the same page. Whereas I used to fly off the handle. I used to be the super over aggressive. You did it as an employee or somebody who's working for me. You do something wrong, I just rip into you without a second thought about it. It was all a progression and a learning that. And just kind of putting things into perspective that it's not the end of the world if something small goes wrong. You can fix it.
Okay.
It's not the biggest issues ever.
And so I guess go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say with working with the employees, when they make a mistake, they've got to do something drastic to, really be a major issue. Like they've got to steal something, which has never happened to me, thank God. They've got to, punch a hole in a wall. They've got to do something so over the top that I will actually lose my mind about it. The rest of the time, it's like, okay, let's go outside and we'll talk about this. It's not the end of the world. You haven't set the house on fire. You just made this mistake. We're going to fix it. Not a big deal. It's all about talking about it as opposed to exploding about it.
So it sounds like you essentially you really learned how to manage expectations very well, and including your own. So you've taken that, you've learned to look at the bigger picture of the job, calm down, be able to look at what's going on around you, knowing that you can still accomplish it, and talk with people in a way that is productive instead of making people more upset and really hammering in on them and basically belittling them and making them feel useless. You're building people up and letting them feel that they truly are a part of the team and what they do matters.
Yeah. It's something I probably should have learned, 20-something years ago from, well, I have my degree in adventure recreation, so it was a lot of facilitating groups and team building and that sort of stuff. And I was terrible at that. So, but if I'd learned this 20 years ago, I probably would have been great at it.
Well, you got there. It's just, and the important thing is that you got there. So how does that attitude work better having employees versus 1099 contractors?
Well, from the 1099 contractor side of it, you hire somebody, you give them a work order that says you need to install carpet, wood, ceramic, whatever, in this area. You can't tell them how to do it, when to do it, the amount of time they can do it in, the level of quality you need it done in, and you can't say, I'm going to pay you this much. There's nothing in that you can actually do. What you can do is, as a 1099, as a subcontractor, I need you to do this. Here you go. And they have to figure out the rest of it. You can give them guidelines, but you can't do much to hold them to it. And if you start holding them to it with imposing penalties because they took too long or they didn't do X, Y, and Z, that wasn't clearly written in the work order for what the agreed job is, then there's no way to really penalize them. And then actually the courts don't like when you start putting in penalties to those sort of situations. With an employee, I can say, you've got 2 hours to do the rip out and the prep in this room. You've got to move the furniture and you can't scratch the floor. You've got to do this and that. And unfortunately, if they do move the furniture and they scratch the floor, that's me. But there's no way I can penalize them. But I can hold them to standards that, as a 1099, I really legally can't do. And it doesn't muddy the waters. And unfortunately, a lot of the industry is done with 1099, where they are just employees, but they're being paid incorrectly and classified incorrectly. And if one government body comes after me, so let's say the IRS comes along and says, and they do their tests, and they find that they're employees. Now, they're going to, flag you, and the Department of Revenue, not Department of Revenue, the Department of Labor is going to come along and go, well, you failed that your 1099s are actually subcontractors, and they're actually employees. So now we're going to run a different set of tests, and they're going to take their pound of flesh, and then that's going to open you up to somebody else. And then the insurance companies are going to be like, well, you got flagged over here with these guys, and they said, hey, you're not really that. So now all of a sudden, because you were trying to skirt around the system, something that would have cost you, say, $15,000 in taxes is now all of a sudden costing you $60,000, because now you've got to pay the penalties, and you've got to pay all these back taxes, which you probably don't have sitting around, because they've turned your subcontractors into employees. So, and just because you got by on one of them, even though you got flagged, say you got by on with the Department of Labor, you've been flagged, so now you're in the system as a potential violator, and somebody else can come along and you can fail their set of tests, which are all completely different. Every department has a different set of tests that determine if you're an employee or a subcontractor.
Okay. It's definitely something that when you are getting your business to that point, you need to go find a trusted advisor, whether it's your bookkeeper, your CPA, both, a tax attorney. You need to get people involved that can help you determine what system is going to work best for you and how that needs to be set up.
How to structure it correctly.
Exactly. It's not cheap. Look, having employees matching their taxes, paying for payroll to be processed. What else? You're paying into FICA and Medicare and all of that. Do you want to offer a 401k plan? Do you want to match it? Like, there's a lot that goes into it, and it can cost you a pretty penny. But at the end of the day, doing it the right way and not getting caught 5 years down the road and having to pay back taxes and penalties and things like that is far worth it. Let alone, as you were saying before, you get a little bit more control. That's definitely one thing I need to learn to give up is control and trust people to do a job. But I can set the standard for my company by having an employee, whereas with a subcontractor, you can expect great quality from them and not want to get callbacks. But the minute you hand that job over, in my opinion, you don't know what's going to happen out on that job because you can't actually control the quality.
Yeah.
So, and that's the scary part is I want to be able to determine and guarantee that this is going to be how it, I can write up a book and everyone has to follow that book.
Yep.
You can't do that when you're sending out 1099 contractors.
Yeah.
One
of the things I find that I really enjoyed was when I came back and I started educating myself and going to seminars and whatnot, is sitting into Jeffrey King. He's the general counsel for the WFCA. Whenever he has a seminar, I will make it, except I don't know if he did one last year or if he's doing one this year at the surfaces, but with the competition, I'm not going to be able to make those. But I always make sure I go to his seminars about it, because even though you think you know, you don't really know, and especially dealing with the law and the craziness of it. Like, I thought the 1099 employee rules were pretty cut and dry. You give somebody a 1099, they're a subcontractor. But then there's all these different tests that go into it, and then there's this and that, and everybody has different. Each department has different rules and tests, and and that's just that part of it. And it's just like, how is this actually out there, and how does anybody comply with the rules? And in all honesty, I know just as many retailers that were using 1099s for technically employees who are out of business as I do ones that have followed all the rules, and every few years they still get whacked with fines because they didn't cross one I, or or cross a T or dot an I, and it's silly stuff like that. So it's all about educating yourself and keeping track of the rules, and trying to follow everything as best you can. And for the most part, if it's something silly that you miss, you're going to be able to negotiate something out, as opposed to being bankrupted with thousands of dollars of fines and fees.
Yeah. And look, you can go on the IRS website and look at employee versus subcontractor guidelines. And I'll be honest, I've read them. Even in their own definitions, it's muddy. It's absolutely ridiculous that it's not cut and dry. But there are some clear-cut things. So as we said before, if you're going to 1099 someone, you can hand them the work order, and you can't tell them they have 3 days to get that project done, and you can't tell them that they have to be there every day at 7 a.m. It's up to them when they show up, and they work that out with the client of when they want to show up, how long they're going to work, and how many days it's going to take. But if it's my employee and, they're on a W-2, then I can say, you're going to be there at 7 a.m., you're going to put in your 8 hours, and you have 3 days to get this done. I expect it to be done in 24 hours or less. So that's one little thing, but when you really read through everything, it's pretty muddy, and that's why I'm saying go get your team involved. And if you don't have a bookkeeper or a CPA or a tax attorney and things like that, start building it. As your company grows, it's one of the best investments you can make. Your time is better spent elsewhere. That the money you're going to spend on those things it's nothing. I think,
in all honesty, for setting up the employees, we were using Run Payroll, which is run by the checks company, the direct deposit payroll company.
Okay.
That's huge. It was like $90 a month. You just plug in your information, your employees' information. Excuse me. Plug in your employees' information. Every week you sit down, put in their hours, and it spits out, you deposit this much money, and it's, you either write a check or it's direct deposited to the employee's account. And then every month, every quarter, when the paperwork is supposed to be filed, it's filed, and you're done. You don't have to worry about, this or that. It costs a little bit more for the, workers' comp side of it, but it's not that big of a deal. It's, it's just a little bit more, but you're covered. If there's ever an issue, and you can prove with their time cards that you entered all the information correctly, it falls back on the payroll company. It doesn't fall really directly on you. So you're making sure the paperwork is all taken care of. You're not really sweating. Am I filling this form out correctly? Am I making sure the reports are filed on time? I'm plugging in my employees' hours. I'm making sure the money's in the bank account, and then the money goes out that same week, and then it sits in their account, and then they take care of it from the quarterly and monthly filings.
Okay.
And it's really not costing you anything more.
No, I pay my bookkeeper $100 a month right now, and every time I run payroll, it costs me $25 for up to 3 employees. So I'm between myself and Brad, I'm spending $150 a month on bookkeeping services. That's, in the grand scheme of things, the way I look at it is I should be able to do about $5,000 in labor a week. So there's $20,000 a month. I'm losing $150 of that. Are you kidding me? Like, it's a drop in the bucket, man. Just pay it. And I don't have to worry about a thing. I send them an email on Friday with how many hours Brad had. And then every 2 weeks, they cut him a check. And they tell me the check's going to come out. It's for this amount. If I want them to mail it to them, they mail it to them. If I can stop by the office, or I'm actually in a B&I group with my bookkeeper, so she usually just brings it to the meeting on Thursdays with me. I give it to him that day, so he has it a day early. It clears my bank account. The next week they send out, hey, this is how much is going to come out for taxes and things like that for paying the FICA and the Medicare. That hits my bank account the following week. I don't have to think about a thing. They handle everything. I'm paying $50 a month. I don't think about it. I don't ever have to worry about it. Everything's taken care of. And that's cheap for peace of mind.
$50 you're ever spending.
That's exactly it, because now I can go and I don't have to figure out how to do payroll taxes. I don't want to. I understand why I'm paying them. I understand how I'm paying them, but I don't have to think. And so I can put my efforts into this podcast. I can go and advertise. I have time for another estimate. Like, you know, where's my time better spent? Well, probably finding a way to generate more income for the company. So and even if I was doing 1099 work and I was subbing a bunch of stuff out, well, guess what? Now I've got to make a separate file for that or start a spreadsheet or something like that. And at the end of the year, I'd better go and get all those numbers together so that my 1099 can be accurate. So once again, paying the money for the bookkeeper, if I was going to sub something out, all I have to do is tell them, you know, I'm going to send an extra invoice and mark it as like 1099 to this guy. They'll put that in QuickBooks for me and I'm done.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, just besides having employees, like you got to look at building that team around you, and they're technically your employees too. You're paying them to do a job for you. And so you've got to build that stuff up around you. You know, I have a bunch of social media content that I want to not have on my plate anymore. And I need to find the right company to partner with and pay to do that aspect of the business for me. I need to work on my website. I need to work on the Floored-U-Cation website. And I've talked about trying to get the episodes posted up weekly, trying to get transcripts made so that there's all searchable content for it. And that's going to take somebody. So it's just, you got to put the right pieces in play to make things happen. And you've got to know how they all work together. But once they're there, it's going to make running your company so much easier. You can focus on the things that truly matter.
No, it really is all about, you know, getting the pieces into place. And it's hard to find people that you can trust and you can work with. Because even though, you know, you're paying the bookkeeper and the accountant, you still have to be able to know that they're going to do things correctly. And when they see an issue, are going to be able to come to you and say, hey, we need to fix this. I actually use two different accountants, and that's just how I happen to have come across them. But it's, you know, if I have a question about taxes and payroll, I go to this one. If I have a question about how these things are tracked in QuickBooks or in the invoicing or whatever, I go to this one. If I have, you know, if I get an answer I'm not really sure is the right answer, I still have someone else I can go, ask their opinion. And most of the time, they're saying exactly the same thing, but I've still got that, you know, is this really what the best way to do this is sort of a second opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and again, with, you know, bookkeepers or accountants, you still need that with somebody who's, you know, going to be able to handle your social media or handle your day-to-day operations in the office, or, you know, working out paperwork or scheduling or materials. It's just like developing a relationship with your distributors. You need to have that back and forth and that trust that they're going to be having your best interest, even when you might be trying to make the wrong decision. And they can call you out and be like, hey, really, there's a better way to do this. You need to be able to do it like this. Or you want to use this. And, you know, so you need to work with that and create a partnership, even if you are paying them money and you want them to be more biased to you, but they're going to tell you how to do it right.
And that's, there's the key word. And I just recorded an episode. It'll come out before this one. So the episode with Liz Calandrino, we talk about how it's important to have partnerships. And I think that's exactly it, is that a lot of guys think that once you're 1099 and you're running your shop and stuff, you have these guys, you hand off the stuff and it goes. They're just the installers. Like, I'm going to focus on my salespeople and my store, and everything is just kind of work out. Well, I think automatically built into that employer-employee relationship is that partnership. You don't get a choice about it. And that's the key to what makes those more successful, is that you have to have it's a symbiotic relationship. You each give and take from each other. And so if you are going to 1099 guys, you need to have a partnership with them. I'm building partnerships, like you said, with a distributor. I have people there that I know I can go and talk to. They're going to point me in the best direction for solutions that I'm looking for, because they might know the products a little bit better than I do. Or they may have talked to different installers and heard something of how to solve the problem that I'm dealing with. I have partnerships at, with my bookkeeper. I know I can call her and ask her questions. I don't know, you've got a partnership with your partner, with your wife or significant other. Like you have to communicate and keep an open line of communication both ways, because you each need things, and without talking about them, you're not going to get what you want. And that's 100% key to anything. If you want to be successful, you've got to find a way to give and take and get what you want out of what, the business or employee or whatever. And so,
any of the retailers I work with, they know they can call me at any time and ask a question. And I know I can call them when I'm on a job of theirs. They're like, hey, this is what we found, and we need to do it this way to do it correctly. And I know they're going to listen to what I have to say about it. And when they call and they're like, hey, we're looking at this job and it has these things going on at it, what do we need to do it correctly? They're going to listen to, what I have to say. And if I'm telling them something and they're like, well, in the past we've done this, I can educate them as to why we need to do it a certain way, and they'll listen to it. But they're not going to, but they trust that I'm not going to, just tell them, you need to do it this way so that I can get more money from you. I'm going to teach you, I'm going to tell you how to do it so we can do it the correct way. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes they'll call me with a question and I'll start answering it, and then they'll be like, well, we've done it this way in the past, and the way it's been done in the past is a way I've never thought about it. But I'm willing to listen to them and learn from what they're telling me. And sometimes that is the best way. But as long as it meets all the, all the standards and checks all the boxes, that's great. Well, now it's not just, you're cutting me a check every week that I do work for you, and I'm not just taking your money. We're actually working together. We're making something better, and that's the important part of it. And it's hard to find, a lot of places that are really willing to, as a 1099, as a subcontractor, to be open to that type of a relationship. A lot of them just want to be like, here's the work, do it, here's the check. Mm-hmm. But when you find a true partner in it, you can do a lot of great things. You can push to meet more of the standards. You can push to raise the rates, raise the professional, raise the expectation of everybody involved in the entire transaction, from the client and the consumer at the end, all the way up, down to the installer who's finishing it, even if it's not myself. But they can push the other crews that they have to meet that standard of, being better.
Yeah. Well, and you're talking about building a relationship, and that's going to build trust and value. And that's, what do you have if you don't have either one of those? You've got to have trust. You've got to have respect. There's got to be some kind of value that everyone's getting out of it. And so once those are in place, you can really do a lot more with what you're working with. And so everyone's, like you said, you're just going to get more out of people when you're working on that level, and you can start raising that bar higher.
Yeah. And oftentimes, unfortunately, some of the other guys aren't too happy that you're moving that bar, but if that's the best thing for everybody, we're going to move that bar.
Yeah. Well, and I don't see how, oh man. That's frustrating, because obviously the goal of this show is to raise the bar for everybody and really elevate the industry. And it's become such a commodity. you can go out there and you can go on Craigslist. There's going to be a guy that'll install your vinyl plank for $1 a square foot. There's guys that'll take tile out for $1 a square foot. I've seen guys setting tile for $1 a square foot on like 12 by 24s and the 9 by 60s and stuff. It's ridiculous. Because Chuck and a truck can come along and handyman Bob, and they'll do it for nothing. Because you can go to the box store and buy it. You don't have to go to a specialty mom and pop shop to get your stuff anymore. And the trades since the college agenda started, I feel, have just taken a beating. And anybody can do them. Anybody's willing to do them for next to nothing because they feel it's so easy. Well, yeah, when I do it and it looks like garbage, of course it's easy. So, raising that bar and bringing a little respect back to it is what I'm after. And why anybody would get mad at that, I have no idea. Like, why take pride in what you do and strive to do it better than anyone else. Really, really raise that bar in quality and be proud of what you're doing. Charge accordingly. And I think that when everyone starts doing that, you're going to stop seeing so many people saying, oh yeah, I can set your shower. Yeah, I'll fix that electrical issue for you.
Yeah. A lot of the unhappiness with the raising the bar comes from guys who just kind of become complacent, and well, we've done that for, that's how we've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not understanding and accepting that there's other ways out there. There's better ways out there. There's, the actually doing it properly. One of my employees I actually loaned out at the request of one of the retailers I work with to one of their other installers because they needed help. It was not a complicated job, but it was in a apartment building on the 5th floor, and the door locked every time they went out, and the guy worked alone. So I was like, yeah, sure, okay, he can go. It's always good to have, an experience of this is how somebody else does it.
Mm-hmm.
So I lent him out, and the guy was adamant that he did nothing but trash talk everybody else that worked for this particular retailer. He swore up and down he got paid the best out of everybody. He did the best work. He tried to use a spike for stretching the carpet on a concrete floor, and when he realized, oh wait, it's concrete, and I can't do that, he refused to bring up the power stretcher, so he ended up kicking the job in.
Oh,
and my guy comes back and he's like, Don, you wouldn't believe it, and he starts going on this tirade. I mean, this is like probably one of the most soft-spoken kids you've ever met. And he just goes on this tirade of everything this guy was doing. He didn't seal the seams. The seams were, cut with a straight edge, but they weren't very well constructed. They weren't sealed, this and that, and the spike, and then the kicking, and bad-mouthing, and and the retailer comes in, he's like, okay, how much do you pay your guy? And I'm like, you know what? It's good. I will cover this one.
Oh, man. Yeah.
It was just like, oh my God. I mean, just do everything the way you're supposed to do it. And, it's not, don't try to cut the corners. Don't badmouth the other people, but expect the best. Don't race for the bottom. And that's what this one was doing for it. And it was like, why? What are you gaining out of it? So
I'm with you. You know what? I think the bigger takeaway from all of that is, your guy is paying attention.
Yeah.
He came back and he was able to say, look, this is all wrong. Not, hey man, he does it better. Like, he knew why it was wrong. And so that's good. He's learning. And my big thing is, I'm not worried so much about fixing who's already necessarily in the industry. Like, if you're willing to learn and you're listening to this, you'll fix yourself because you're already here. So good for you. It's all these young kids that we're going to bring in if we give them that expectation of getting that continuing education, about striving to be the best and finding the best ways and learning the new ways, and encouraging them as they get older and do become installers and move away from being helpers, let's take them to surfaces too. Let's send them to coverings or Domatex or whatever. Like, get them out in the world experiencing this stuff. Take your team with you, because you're going to show them how much you value them when you're getting them out there and letting them learn on their own. It annoys Brad, but I'll turn on Floored-U-Cation when we're at a job. But at some point, I got to listen to these episodes myself. I listen to them as we record them. I listen to them when I edit them. And so a couple months down the road, I'll actually listen to it once it's come out. And it's annoying to hear your own voice, but I still get good info from it that I forget.
Yeah.
I'll turn on the audiobooks in the car when we're driving to a job, and he's on his phone, but I'm setting that example of education matters. There's better times to fill your downtime with than just playing a game on your phone or just listening to music that I've been listening to for 20 years at this point. So if you change their mindset, they're already going to be prepared when if they decide they want to leave and start their own business, then you don't have to worry, because you're going to have a competitor that's raising the bar with you. And if it's a competitor that's raising the bar with you, you don't have a competitor. You have a friend in the industry.
Yep. And I'm actually, talking with one of the guys about taking him out to the CFI convention in August, and he was completely floored by it. I'm like, you're at that level. You are ready to start seeing the bigger world and meeting more people out there to, up your game and learn. This is where you need to be. This is what you need to do. And he's like, I'm not sure, really. And I'm like, yeah, Shane, you're ready. You're ready to be out there, and you're ready to see, what's going on. This year I'm taking Dad out to surfaces. Maybe next year I'll be able to take Shane out with me. And the first time I went out there, I thought I knew. We worked with some stores that had big displays, big showrooms, lots of stuff out there. I walked onto the surfaces in the door, and I looked around and I'm like, I know nothing. I don't know a tenth of what's out there.
Yeah.
And I spent the first 10 years of my career thinking I knew something, and I didn't. And then when I started going back and learning more, I learned I knew even less than I thought I knew. And it's all about the education. It's all about the pushing the idea and the knowledge of what's out there, and being willing to accept that you really don't know anything. You know a little bit of a little bit. You don't know half of what you don't know. So it's all about learning and being willing to try to see what else is out there. And it is really education. It's listening to the podcast. It's listening to going to the seminars, which are sometimes incredibly boring, but chock full of information we need to know. And exposing, employees to it. One, they, appreciate that you're taking them to go to Las Vegas, go to Orlando or San Antonio, or Coverings, I think, is in New Orleans this year.
Who knows? They're all over the place. They change all the time.
Yeah, but they're taking them someplace and showing them something that they have never seen and probably won't be exposed to. It makes them feel valued and that you actually care that they're learning more, so that they can actually increase their knowledge and increase production when it comes back, because they're excited about what they've seen and learned at the whatever particular show it is, and just making it all better for the bigger industry, because these are going to be the guys that in 10 or 15 years, they're the ones that are going to be, stepping up to starting to move into the training side of it, starting to move into focusing on, certification or learning more or pushing the next generation. They're going to be where we are, but they're going to be much more prepared, and they're going to be so much more prepared, they're going to be able to move and push the industry even farther than we ever imagined would be available to us or them.
No, I 100% agree. It's like I said, if you prepare them and give them that mindset to begin with, they're going to be able to do so much more with it. And it's just in doing this podcast, like I can't help but tell everyone, like, please go meet local guys in your area, get to know them, work with them, build those relationships. And that's something I really need to work on in 2020, is getting to know more local installers in my area, because I have access through Flooring Installers of America, Global Tile Posse, Tile Money, Real Hardwood Floor Masters, like all these groups on Facebook. I'm probably in like 15 flooring related Facebook groups. I can reach out to just about anybody and get the info I want. I've built some really good friendships. I'm more excited about going to CFI in Texas here in like a week and a half in January to meet the other installers and build those relationships than I am about getting the actual certification. But it's because building those relationships is important. Like you said, you don't know what you think you know is nowhere near what you think you know. Like, you know very little, but by being able to build all these relationships, I can call on so many other people that may have seen something, experienced something, and I can get that info faster. But while we can help the industry as a whole, and we can all work together to build the whole thing up, if you're not participating locally, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you need to help change your local market while you're trying to help change the national market and the global market. It's all got to come up. But where you're going to be able to make the biggest difference is probably getting involved in your local market and getting people introduced. There's so many guys that probably look, I'm not even a tile guy, and I know this stuff. Like, Schluter comes to Phoenix and a ton of other areas of the country. Every major city pretty much gets free Schluter workshops, and you can go and learn about their products and their foam pans and their finishing edge stuff, and they teach you how it works, what it does, how to use it for free. They'll put you up in the darn hotel. So if you find a class, if you live in, like, I live in Arizona, and I'm stealing this from Luke Miller, like he was in a different part of California. They went and took the class in Anaheim and sent the wife and kids to Disneyland. But Schluter paid for the hotel room, so they got a free hotel stay, and then they just had to pay for Disneyland. So, there's distributors that are putting on these classes, and they'll put you up in the hotel. Like, they're going to give you the class for free. They're going to give you a dinner. They're going to pay for the hotel. Take a vacation, man. Bring the family with. Send them off to do something while you're off learning about the products. So there's tons of ways to do this. And, like, you can introduce people to this. There's guys that don't even know these classes exist, and that there's better methods out there, or better products, and it's not even that they're better. There's options available that, maybe mudding the shower wall would work, but putting foam on it in this instance is a better solution. They're both great, but in this instance, foam will be easier to work with. And so being able to introduce guys to the other options out there is huge. Like I said, if we're going to try and get our helpers to get educated, Ken Ballin says correct, but Ken Ballin says there is no competition. We just we got to bring everybody up with us. So if you raise the bar across the board, everyone can start charging more. Everyone can start doing higher quality work. So go and get involved in your local area and be the person to bring the education to them and help them find it.
Yeah. I've actually been being hounded by the Southern New England Floor Covering Association, which the Connecticut Floor Covering Association developed into. The few members of the board, because of my going out and learning and education and really, coming back. If you look at the Southern New England Floor Covering Association page, like the Facebook page, it's really the either Donald Perkins or the DFP page. I'm always putting up there, here's this training that's coming into the area. Here's this training, here's this deal, like the CFI just did the Black Friday sale deal. I posted that. I mean, back until August, I think I'm the only one that's posted there. And they've been, a couple of members of the board have been like, hey, when are you going to, we don't have any installer influence or representation on the board, what can we get you? Can we get you to come on? Can you do this? Are you interested? And, I finally started looking at it, and I'm like, okay. And especially after I talked to a distributor a week before Christmas, I was over in that area, and I was talking to him, and I was telling him about this podcast and the one with Sonny and Paul, and and he didn't know anything about this. Mm-hmm. And I was telling him about the Flooring Installers of America, and I was all these different things, and the NAFCT training in February, which I'm going to go to for the heat welding and flash coving. He's like, anything you come across, send it to me. Let me know. And I finally was like, you're pretty connected with the local scene. If you don't know, then none of these guys know.
Yeah.
So I finally stopped in and saw one of them on the board, who's been the one who's been really hounding me to join. And I'm like, okay, when's your next meeting? Because I am aware of a much bigger area, a much bigger movement out there than anybody in this area is. And the only way we're going to be able to introduce a better quality, a better standard, is if I actually finally step up and do it. And, not really to the chagrin of my wife, but to the final acceptance that it's going to happen. Beginning of January, I'm going to start sitting in on the board meetings for the Southern New England Floor Covering Association to try to, bring more installer training in and education and what's going on in the kind of the bigger field across the country.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was looking something up and I'll admit it. I stopped paying attention for a second. No, you're talking about getting more involved in being on a committee and things like that. I think that's great. And being able to get that info out to the locals in a better fashion. Just having listened to Sonny and Paul on Floored-U, they're doing something a little bit different. It's a great podcast, and they've talked about how they're on all these different committees and stuff. And you may think it's going to be a huge time commitment. Honestly, they said most of the time it's a conference call. Dude, you can install floors and be on the conference call and participate on the committee and help change the industry. So don't be afraid to get involved, guys. Find something to do. I know that Mark Harakovic has something in the works he's trying to put together. I had kind of come up with something similar that I wanted to work on. Honestly, as soon as I can actually get a showroom space, I want to start holding meetings and just have tradespeople show up. One, for networking, but two, just to get to know people in my scene and who's involved. And I don't care if you're another floor guy, dude, come hang out in my showroom. Let's get to know each other. Let's see if we can't, if I'm busy, can I sub something out to you? Can you sub it? Can you send it my way? Do you specialize in something I don't? Get those relationships built, because you never know who you're going to need. And so if I can hold something once a month, once every 2 weeks, and just kind of get the ball rolling with something, you could make a really big movement where education is going to matter. You're going to get people talking, and you can change what you're dealing with and really raise the bar.
Yeah.
So, all that said, that's a long way from 1099 versus employees, but I think it all It all works together. That's usually how this show goes, though, so it's
Yeah.
okay. I gotta cut us off here. We're a little long, so why don't you go ahead, drop your info again, anywhere people can reach out to you, anything you want to plug.
My name's Don Perkins. I own DFP LLC in Torrington, Connecticut. And, you can get me on my cell at 860-309-6143. We're on Facebook. I'm not even going to talk about Instagram. And we have a website, dfpllcfloor.com. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I'm always here. I may not have the right answer, but if I don't, I'll definitely reach out to, find the right answer for you. I'm never afraid to, help lead you in the right direction. It's been a pleasure, Kyle. It's been kind of fun, actually.
Yeah, man, it's always a blast. This is how I reach out and meet the community. So thank you.
That's okay. We'll meet in surfaces. It'll be fine.
Oh man, I am trying to make a day. I got a free ticket through one of my distributors. So I'm trying to make a day. I got an install, and I'm trying to get it done early so I can make more than a day. Because I know it's going to be big, especially with this podcast developing. And I just got done talking about how it's important to get involved and go to these conventions, so I'd better do it.
There you go.
But no, thank you for everything. Thank you for the time. I know between the two episodes, we've been on the phone now for almost 2 hours and 45 minutes, guys. So, don't be afraid to email me and tell me you want to be a guest on the show. It'll only eat up 2 to 3 hours of your day, but it's totally worth it. It's so much fun. I love getting to know everybody and just talking about the industry. So thank you again for your time, and I look forward to doing it again in the future.
Oh, yeah, it was great doing it. I'll definitely be willing to do something after we get done with the competition at Surfaces. Being a second-year competitor, it'll definitely be an interesting one.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right, bye.
That's all the time we have for this week. To keep the conversation going, head on over to the Floored-U-Cation Facebook group. Be sure to subscribe so you can hear each and every episode. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and most major podcast directories. Don't forget to leave a review and let us know what you think about the show. If you'd like to be a guest, have questions or feedback, you can email us at flooreducation@gmail.com. You can help support the show by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/flooreducation. If you need a discount on your tools, check out toolsforflooring.com and use discount code FLOORED for 5% off. Remember, your education never stops.